Your nervous system is primarily run by a nerve called your vagus nerve. It's the big daddy. The vagus nerve runs through all the organs of our body, through our heart, up into our face. And it's the nerve that helps to kick on that parasympathetic rest and digest state. So if you're wanting to heal, targeting the vagus nerve is something you want to do. And so we're trying to also create nervous system regulation in the body. So your belly is soft, you're digesting, you're breathing nicely, you're able to feel present, you're not dissociated, you're able to handle the feelings that might come up, the emotions, and just stay with them and breathe without your heart rate going through the roof. All of that is done through different types of vagus nerve tools and other nervous system tools that are often called somatic processing, somatic experiencing, somatic presencing.
Hello and welcome to Get Yourself Optimized. I'm your host, Stephan Spencer. It is my pleasure to have Dr. Cathleen King with us. Dr. Cat is a physical therapist and a neuroscience-based mind-body practitioner. Her professional focus is on chronic illness and trauma healing. She's the CEO and founder of the Primal Trust Academy and Community, a rapidly growing worldwide platform helping others unlock their self-healing. Her online program combines brain retraining, vagus nerve toning, somatics, and trauma-informed techniques. Dr. Cat, it's so great to have you on the show.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here.
So first of all, I think it's a fun story to share how we met, and then you got kind of like confirmations that synchronicities that kind of out of the ordinary. Let's just say, you want to share your story about that?
Sure. So I launched a business a couple years ago, and I have a great mentor named Ivan Pollock. And I kept asking him about, website development and SEO. And he's always like, you're not ready. And eventually this fall, he's like, all right, you're ready. And here's the guy. It's Stephan Spencer. And when we met, this whole world of like SEO and business, not quite my thing. I'm definitely very nervous. I didn't want to be turned into like a salesperson type of business. And so I was a little on guard to meet you, to be honest. But our first conversation was so quantum, mind-blowing, serendipitous, out of this world, coincidental. That's the best way I can describe it. That I was like, okay, this is the man I'm supposed to work with because he is so like-minded. There were just so many synchronicities. I was literally reading The Alchemist, and you're like, oh, there's this book called The Alchemist, and there's this line, and the book was sitting right on my table right there, and just so many things. And I was like, oh my gosh. And I love that because for me, I needed some type of witness that starting to go into this business world and in sales, frankly, was going to stay in alignment with my purity, that I was trying to like not become, just some money hungry business company. And there was just a lot of quantum acknowledgement and angelic help that helped me to see like, that's not who Stephan is. He's mission driven and he's a match.
Yeah. I don't normally talk about timelines on a sales call, but I was just guided to talk to you about jumping timelines and Tom Kenyon. And you're like, Tom Kenyon?
I love Tom.
Yeah, not many people know who Tom Kenyon is. So that was another fun synchronicity. And then we started working together, and out of the blue, I'm like, you need to do a full court of atonement on this person that we won't say who it is, but it's like, I was expecting you to say a full court of what? And of course you were like, I was just, well, share what happened.
Yeah. I literally I know what it was. And just that morning, I was like explaining it to someone else and thinking, I need to do this on this situation in my business. And then you gave that second confirmation. I'd never thought of employing that technique with business challenges. So it's just really opened up a world, and it's just been multidimensional and amazing to know you.
Yeah, well, thank you. Same. I feel the same. And yeah, so now let's go to the depths of despair and to talk about your healing journey and your origin story, and how this was the impetus for you starting Primal Trust.
Yeah, well, I was one of those canary in the coal mines that started getting all sorts of weird illnesses, 20 years ago. I was like the only one I knew with like the gluten intolerance and the digestive stuff and then the chemical sensitivity. And I just had all these diagnoses start to pile up: parasites, viruses, Lyme disease, mold toxicity, the PTSD thing. And I felt like I don't belong on this planet. What is wrong with me? I must be cursed. Why is my body just, falling apart? And everyone else my age was in my 20s. They were doing fine. And I was sensitive to EMFs, and people like, what's an EMF? I'm like, the thing out of the computer. It makes me feel like this. And I was just that person. And I was on a long journey of healing. I had a background in mind body healing as a physical therapist, but I didn't know how to apply it to what I was going through. And no doctor really knew what to do with me. I went all over the place trying to see the experts. And eventually I realized that there was this missing piece, which is our ability to self-regulate our own biology. That's the root of all of the health issues I had and all of the health issues that a lot of us have. It comes down to our nervous system capacity. And once I started to apply that principle to my own body, my healing started to skyrocket. And I was like, oh my gosh, all of us highly sensitive empaths, this is the thing that we need. We need nervous system regulation because we are taking in all of the toxicity of the world. We're feeling it. Our bodies are, trying to adapt to all of this. And a lot of us are getting diagnosed with chronic illness when really it's just a very sensitive nervous system. I had a lot of trauma growing up in my childhood. And frankly, the world as it is just is really intense for people. And so I created a program based on my own experience.
Yeah, amazing. And how long is that program, this Primal Trust, how long has that been in place?
Yeah. So the official Primal Trust Academy and community launched 2 years ago. This week, maybe even today, right in this part of December. I was coaching people for a few years before that and learning and doing a lot of beta testing of the process. And we have grown exponentially since for the last couple of years. We serve over 60 countries, taken close to 7,000 people through my program. It's been amazing. It's been amazing to have all that suffering and hardship be an actual calling and a mission.
Yeah. Well, what's the expression that the forged by the crucible, right? Or forged in the crucible. So you became a diamond by being in that high pressure environment, and now you get to share your gift with the world.
Yeah.
So, what would be kind of the process for somebody who wants to heal, to self heal, right? So they're not going to the the medical system, or maybe they are already and getting not very good results, and they're wanting to take control of their own healing journey. They want to be the CEO of their health. What's the process? How do they retrain their nervous system and their brain to be in a place of parasympathetic and not fight or flight all the time?
It's such a good question. And really, that is the question of this decade: is how do we make this consciousness leap of looking external for our health and for our remedies, and lifting out of that fix it mentality, go to a doctor, give me a pill, give me a diagnosis, lifting above it and looking within, looking at what the elephant in the room is inside of you. What's been going on for some time that I'm not dealing with? What is the state of this stress within my system? What are my relationships like? What is my lifestyle like? How am I rushing, going to bed, haven't even taken 1 ounce of time to feel what's in here, whether it's resentment, anger, grief, shame. And I just go to bed and I get up and I'm just so busy the next day. And so it's about looking at your life differently. And instead of rushing to the doctor to figure it out, dropping in, how am I living? And typically, if you've got chronic symptoms, whether usually it starts off with like anxiety, insomnia, digestive issues, that's kind of the the first thing that the first breakdown. It's slowing down. We have to be in a rest and digest state to sleep, to digest our food, and to have our organs detoxify properly. So how much of your day are you spending literally messaging, responding, running around, distracting, versus being with yourself, noticing the trees, taking a walk without listening to something, and just being present, looking your spouse in the eye and having an actual conversation, or your children for that matter. All of that is regulating. And if you're not doing that, you're likely dysregulated and you're going to start breaking down. And that's usually how it starts, is just sympathetic overdrive, which is fight or flight overdrive, and just not feeling well. So that's what I'd say.
So how does that relate to somebody who is dealing with chronic fatigue or Lyme disease or some other illness that may not even have been diagnosed properly or diagnosed at all for them?
Well, typically, if you look at your history, what I'm describing right now about going, pushing past your own limits, saying yes when you mean no, is the setup for chronic fatigue, for Lyme disease, for mold toxicity, for all of these syndromes. It usually starts with a lifestyle where your nervous system is at its max. And then there's usually some type of insult. It might be a chemical insult. You move into a moldy house. Maybe you get a virus, or you get bit by a tick, or whatever pathogen might enter your body, or a divorce, or a loss of a job. There's some insult that breaks the straw, the straw that broke the camel's back. And so what's happened is you've already had the setup of a nervous system that's dysregulated, a chronic stress response. And now you have some type of overload to the body, and it can't detoxify. It can't appropriately fight that infection. It can't, get a foothold on the energy it needs. And so just focusing on the Lyme, the mold, et cetera, that's not, it's not the root cause. A lot of people have tested for Lyme disease, mold toxicity, et cetera, and they don't have symptoms because their body is handling it. Their body is not in that chronic stress state. So we teach people to say, okay, yeah, you might have these diagnoses, but let's get to the root, to a nervous system that is stuck in the stress response. It's literally stuck in something called cell danger response, which means on a cellular level, all of your energy is getting used to signal danger. It's getting used to tell the cell wall to harden and not detoxify. That hardening of the cell wall also keeps nutrients from coming inside the cell. And it also causes the immune system to be out of balance, sometimes overreactive in some ways and underreactive in others. So the cell danger response is what we are targeting with the method I teach, which is nervous system regulation, getting the cell, getting signaling to say, we're okay, we're out of the war, we're taking care of ourselves now, we are leading a more balanced lifestyle, we are using practices to target our vagus nerve, our brain, things like that, to again signal safety all the way down to the cellular level. And that starts to shift the chronic symptoms.
All right. So what are some examples of results that your community members have gotten by employing your techniques?
Yeah. Well, the cool thing is, it doesn't matter how long you've been sick. A lot of people think, I've been sick 10, 20, 30, 40 years. This won't work. No, your nervous system has been dysregulated 10, 20, 30, 40 years. The cool thing is that our brain and our nervous system, very changeable. So I'm seeing people, into their 60s, 70s, healing from lifetime of stuff, which is amazing. We're seeing very specific conditions turn around quite rapidly, where I just had a woman I interviewed a couple weeks ago. She was going to have 80% of her colon taken out because she had massive digestive issues, autoimmune issues, and it was just terrible. She said, her doctor said, well, there's one more thing. It's called Primal Trust. It's a program to regulate your nervous system. Let's see. 4 months later, she's completely healed, off all of her medication, no need for surgery. Lyme disease, left and right, people's symptoms are just falling away. They haven't been taking medication for the infection. They've been regulating their nervous system, and now they have their energy back. Some of them don't even test positive for Lyme anymore. Like, their immune system is going after it. People's ability to detoxify starts to turn on. And so they're able to actually live around mold when they thought, or chemicals, when they thought, oh, for the rest of my life, I have to avoid this. No, the nervous system actually knows how to get rid of these things, and they can have improved tolerance to those things. So it's been remarkable to see the myriad of different diagnoses start to change simply by working on what we consider a root cause, which is nervous system that is in distress.
I was just interviewing Scott Harrison. He's the founder of Charity Water, and he was sharing his story of his mother got toxic mold exposure, and it not only dysregulated, or it put her into that stress response, the cell danger response. And I'm sure all the different things at a cellular level that you're talking about, the cell membranes hardening and all that, happened. But she became so sensitive to smells and to just regular things, like even the smell of the print in a book. She couldn't. She'd get so sick just by smelling that, and so her son Scott would have to bake in the oven the books that she wanted to read. She had to live in her bathroom and put aluminum foil on the surfaces so that there was nothing that was going to react with her skin and cause all sorts of horrible allergic responses. She had to essentially live in that bathroom for many, many years, and it was never solved. It's an incredible story, and wow, what a difference something like Primal Trust could have made for her. She's passed now, but these things that seem like incurable or impossible to solve, as there's a lot of innovation happening now, like what you're up to, that makes seemingly impossible stuff now possible.
There are so many stories like that. I was somebody also that couldn't read books for the same reason. And so many people, literally, their lives they live in a little tiny prison. And you think, what in the heck is happening? Literally, they're becoming allergic to the world. That's what's happened. The nervous system is so over responsive to threats, internal and external, that everything gets identified as a threat. But the cool thing is, there's a part of our brain called our limbic system, our amygdala, that is this associating making machine. And just in the way that it's neuroplastic and can become allergic to everything, it can also rewire and become unallergic to everything. I see people who are getting all of their foods back, able to be in different environments. And we think, really, we can retrain our own brain and nervous system to respond, even though I've been to all of these doctors? Yes, because that is the paradigm shift I'm speaking of, this power that we have within our own brain and nervous system using our consciousness to make new associations. Our body is a servant to our mind, to our consciousness. And when you learn how to harness that capacity to think and feel differently, miracles happen.
Yep. And I love the quote. I learned while studying Kabbalah that miracle isn't the impossible becoming possible, but the removal of the illusionary veils that hide the fact that everything is a blessing and everything is happening perfectly as it's meant to, for your highest good.
What's amazing is that all the stories that I do, the testimonial videos I do of people who've healed, every single one of them says they are grateful they got sick. Every one. They see the blessing. The illusion was revealed. And that's exactly it. There's some way that they awakened as a person that would not have happened if they hadn't learned how to consciously self regulate their own biology. And they become grateful for it.
And I presume that you too are grateful for all the challenge you went through.
It gives meaning to a very difficult way that I grew up and understanding of why I went through what I went through. Like, I'm here to help connect dots for people now. And I couldn't connect them if I hadn't seen them myself and went through it.
I recently interviewed Dr. Steven Gundry, and he was talking about how he went from the traditional medical system, and he was a real innovator in his field. He invented some technologies that are still in use today for heart patients. And what struck me was how people kept showing up with the same symptomology, and if they had just changed their diets, they would have had much less symptomology or even none. And so he went to the root cause, and he started writing books about nutrition and changing your diet and improving your immune system and so forth. And he's achieved so much for people. And it just got me thinking about him when you were talking about this lady's doctor recommended, we've run out of options. Why don't you try Primal Trust before we actually go through with removing 80% of your colon? I would love for the medical establishment to be that aware, generally, not just one individual doctor like that, but brain retraining, regulating your nervous system is something that can actually solve this problem.
I think I probably saw at least 20 specialists in those years where I was looking, and not one told me to do nervous system work to help with these symptoms. And I just think that they weren't trained. That's what I mean. Like, this is a shift in consciousness. This is a new paradigm in wellness that we're creating right now, including the diet, including, watching our toxic load and all of the things that we're doing nowadays. And it's, it'll catch on. I mean, even in the last year, dozens and dozens of new practitioners are referring to our program because their patients are getting results, and they're like, I don't know what you're doing, but it's working. And, so it's just the beginning, really.
I'm excited for what's in store for you and all the people, all your community, all the people that you're going to help. Yeah. So can you differentiate for our listener nervous system regulation, brain retraining, and just generally neuroplasticity?
Yeah, good questions. So let's just start with neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity is the ability to wire different neurons together and make new associations. Our brain is a rehearsal machine. It's literally just rehearsing what it's learned, making associations like, oh, I got bit by a dog at 2. The association is dog is bad, and then I'm scared the rest of my life. That's just because of a memory and an association. The cool thing is that you can change associations in the brain. You can rewire, and through neuroplastic practices, teach your brain and your body to respond differently, including to allergies. So food allergies are, I think, going to be a thing of the past, because we know we can rewire our body's response to different foods. There's a lot of therapies out there that do that. That's neuroplasticity. It's just creating a new association between the brain and the body. So brain retraining is using different practices to target the limbic system of the brain, which is the emotional center of the brain, where there's structures like the amygdala, which is our fear center, our fight or flight center, it triggers fear. There's the hippocampus, that's our memory center. There's our hypothalamus that makes all sorts of the chemicals to help run our body. The limbic system, if you can target that with practices, you can easily rewire the brain, because the brain rewires most specifically with emotion, and the limbic system is the emotional center. So if you were going to rewire a food allergy, you might hold that food that you're allergic to, maybe even like taste it, and think of the most positive, beautiful memory that you can. And the brain starts producing chemicals of safety and connection and joy while associating with that food. And then it wires a new perception. This food is associated with safety and joy. No longer does the immune system target it as threat over time. It's a repetition-based method. It has to be repetitive and ideally emotionally charged. That's how you rewire the brain. So we use different brain retraining techniques. We use memory activation, where we do memory repatterning. You're bringing up memories, and then you're bringing up positive memories, and you're shifting your perception of the past. We also do different future rehearsal and mental rehearsal exercises to teach the brain how to plan for an event. Like maybe you're going to speak in front of people. You can retrain the brain to be excited about that, to be calm about that if you're afraid. And it's just through rehearsal that you do that. And so brain retraining was one of the first methods that I really took seriously when I was recovering from Lyme disease and chronic fatigue. And it was powerful. I mean, it shifted my symptoms very quickly. And, I wasn't taking medicine or supplements. I didn't have any money at that time to do anything. And I was like, oh my gosh. And so the next piece is nervous system regulation. So you have your brain, and then you have your autonomic nervous system that runs through your whole body. Your nervous system is primarily run by a nerve called your vagus nerve. It's the big daddy. The vagus nerve runs through all the organs of our body, through our heart, up into our face. And it's the nerve that helps to kick on that parasympathetic rest and digest state. So if you're wanting to heal, targeting the vagus nerve is something you want to do. And so we're trying to also create nervous system regulation in the body. So your belly is soft, you're digesting, you're breathing nicely, you're able to feel present, you're not dissociated, you're able to handle the feelings that might come up, the emotions, and just stay with them and breathe without your heart rate going through the roof. All of that is done through different types of vagus nerve tools and other nervous system tools that are often called somatic processing, somatic experiencing, somatic presencing. Somatic simply means body-based focus. So we target the brain and we target the body, the vagus nerve, the somatic system, because if they communicate together, you're getting a holistic approach of the body. And so that would be my explanation in a nutshell.
Okay, and the vagus nerve versus other nerves, because I'm sure we have plenty of nerves in our body. Why is the vagus nerve talked about so much in comparison to other nerves?
Because it's the nerve that primarily regulates your autonomic nervous system. Now we've got skeletal nerves, we've got pain nerves, we've got other types of nerves that relay information, but the vagus nerve is called the wandering nerve, and it's the big one that runs through all of the organs, all through the body. It's got a direct connection from the gut to the heart to the brain. It's talking to your amygdala. It's talking to the brain to give it information, and then it's relaying information back into the body. So if you're having digestive issues, you're going to want to target your vagus nerve. In fact, it can be way more potent than medication, if I dare say that publicly, but it's true. Vagus nerve exercises, simple breathing exercises, can have a massive impact on your acid reflux and your indigestion and things like that, because it runs your digestive system. So it's simple to target. That you can Google it. There's a lot of ways of targeting it, but breathing, humming, singing, cold showers, those are a few of the really popular ones that literally tone the vagus nerve, like going to the gym and like making your biceps stronger. You can tone your vagus nerve to become stronger with several simple activities that I just mentioned. And so we teach people how to do that. We get them on a vagus nerve toning program, in addition to a brain retraining program and other things, to strengthen their nervous system's capacity to handle stress.
And where does somatic experiencing, or SE, fit in? And that's a term that means something. So if you could define that for our listener, because it's not just body experiencing, like it's a modality.
SematicExperiencing was coined by Peter Levine. And it's basically a practice of becoming present in the body with what's there emotionally, physically, also present with the environment. It's about the present moment and handling what's coming up rather than distracting. It's about presencing also the trauma that is stored in our body. And he has a great method and modality to help people very carefully, incrementally presence that trauma, the emotions, and be able to have the nervous system stay in eye contact in difficult conversations, to be able to keep the breath regulated when you're upset, to be able to slow down and notice, wow, I haven't been processing that thing that really upset me earlier today. So it's a way of helping you stay regulated in your nervous system, trauma processing, and it's an essential ingredient, in my opinion, in chronic illness recovery.
And trauma processing. One modality that I actually had the founder of this program on this podcast several years ago. His name is David Berselli, and it's TRE, or trauma release exercises. So I was really amazed with the power of it, because when I interviewed him, I did not have any experience with it, but he graciously offered to work with me and my wife Orion to give us an experience of TRE, which we did do sometime later. And wow, it was incredible. So the important thing about it is, or one of the important things about it is that you do have to kind of get back to that place of where you were having, I don't know, your amygdala hijacked or your nervous system hijacked, and feel like you're going through that again. So you bring up that memory of what you're experiencing, and because your body doesn't know and your brain doesn't know that you're experiencing that in the past. Everything is in the now. So if you do anything, any modality for trauma releasing, whether it's EMDR, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, or it's tapping or whatever, you do need to be in a place where you're having gotten triggered, or you're remembering being in that place of trauma so that you can clear it. It's my understanding, at least. So maybe you could clarify that for our listener, because I'm not an expert in this area.
Yeah. Well, what I'll say is that I think it's really important that if you're going to do trauma release exercises, trauma processing exercises, it's important to have some type of nervous system regulation or brain retraining toolkit in place, because when you start opening up Pandora's box of what's in there, if you're not supported, if you're not resourced, if you don't know how to self-regulate on a basic level, it can be re-traumatizing. That was the case for me. I did a lot of trauma work in those years I was sick, and it made me worse. I didn't know how to make new associations. I didn't know how to leave the therapist's office and have tools of vagus nerve calming and brain retraining. So one of the things that we teach is that we teach the somatic piece later. We start with vagus nerve toning, brain retraining, and then trauma processing. So I just want to clarify that as my opinion first. But what you're doing with trauma processing, trauma is literally, at one point, your consciousness got so flooded with an emotional event, it couldn't make sense of it. And so the brain, in its brilliance, protects you from that, and it locks it away in kind of like a memory structure in the brain and often in the body. So you don't have to feel it. So you don't have to process what you can't understand. Well, when we start doing trauma processing, EMDR, somatic experiencing, parts work, whatever, it's like taking that frozen memory and opening up the file and allowing that energy to flow through the body and be felt. It has to be felt and witnessed to release without resistance. If you start to resist, the body's going to close it right back down again. So having tools in place, having basic nervous system regulation skills is essential, or having somebody that can hold space for you and carefully titrate the opening of that memory file just to allow little bits of it and then close it back down. So a skilled therapist, I think, is very important in this kind of case. And so what we're doing, we're opening it up, allowing that energy to be released, the energy that's literally stuck in our cells, it's stuck in our psyche, allowing it to move, to be felt by an adult that can handle it now, an adult that can feel the feels and handle the shakes and handle whatever needs to come out and witness what was not able to be witnessed when the trauma happened. And that's how we heal or process trauma.
And what exactly is an amygdala hijack? How does that relate to this situation?
Well, it's when we are so flooded with emotion that our prefrontal cortex goes offline and we are just in reaction. That might happen when you've had a really busy day and all of a sudden a big stress happens and you just maybe yell at your spouse or your kids and you're like, oh my gosh, what just happened? your amygdala was in reaction mode, was emotionally hot, and your prefrontal cortex was offline because you're in survival mode. So an amygdala hijack means that survival center of our brain is dominating your consciousness at the time. And literally, if your prefrontal cortex is offline, there's not much you can do about it in that moment, but ride that wave.
And how does that relate to shock? When somebody is in shock, their brain, the prefrontal has gone offline. And if you say something like, don't panic, all they hear is the word panic, and then they freak out even more. So you have to say, remain calm. I learned that from, I forget where, but it's an important thing for EMTs to know, for example. So how does amygdala hijacks versus a shock, how do those relate?
Shock would be the extreme end of the spectrum of an amygdala hijack. It just means that what's happening in the body or in the environment is so much that your prefrontal is offline and your body has taken over to keep you alive. And that, reptilian brain and our emotional brain is running the show. It's keeping your heart pumping. It's, keeping you breathing, and you're just full on in emotional fight, flight, or freeze. And so that's all really you're able to do. Sometimes you're even non-responsive when you're in shock. You're just totally shut down and your body's just keeping you alive. So that's just the far end of the spectrum there.
Got it. Now you said fight, flight, or freeze. Now many people only have heard of fight and flight or fight or flight, but there's that third option, which is freeze, and that's what my brain goes into in a shock or type of overwhelm situation. So if I am in physical danger, I'll freeze like a deer in headlights, which is not a great way to be. So how do you address that? How do you fix that situation?
Well, you've got to understand where it comes from. So think of a field mouse in a field and a bird of prey overhead. That field mouse can't run away from the bird. It's not going to make it. The bird's going to see it. It can't fight the bird either. So the field mouse's only form of protection is freeze. So if we feel like we're in a situation where the threat is actually bigger than us, we can't run away from it. It's too much. We can't fight it. We're too little. That's the third option, is to just, it's actually a combination of um totally collapsing and wanting to run away. And it's overwhelm, and we feel like it's too big for us. And that's the freeze response.
So how do you overcome that? How do you get out of freeze or having that be your go-to? I don't want to be in a place where I'm getting threatened by some big guy or somebody with a weapon, and I need to protect my family, and I'm frozen like a field mouse.
you know Totally. Well, the way out of freeze is through movement always, and it's through movement that's safe. And sometimes if you've got to do this analysis of the current situation, is there really a predator in this room that's about to get me? Um, or am I just so overworked and over emotionally stimulated that the whole thing looks like a big predator, but it's actually just this and this and this and this and this. So in our modern day, there isn't a big predator. There's a lot of small things that we turn into a big predator. So it's getting, taking a step back and being like, okay, I actually have this, this, and this on my plate, and I've got this really emotional situation here. It's starting movement in one category. Often getting some to-dos done, like healthy dopamine hits, can pull you out of freeze. Like, I'm going to wash the dishes and put them in the dishwasher, can actually pull you out of freeze. Listen to music. Music can help. And some action that gets something done. Or I'm going to pay these bills or send this email, even though I'm feeling frozen. Some type of movement towards, you know, getting something done. Sometimes simply just turning on music and letting it move your body, and then changing the music from like slow into eventually maybe like a little more intense where you find your power again. I love 5 rhythms dancing for this kind of thing. It takes you through different rhythms of the body. And I love how it takes you basically from being slow and still in through some power and release, and then back into a calmness. So I highly recommend that. But it's about looking for what can you influence rather than tackling the whole thing. You'll go right back into freeze. look at the thing and what can I start to change right now? Maybe I have to have one difficult conversation today. And that's all you can do, but that's what needs to be done.
Yeah, and you said five rhythms. That's ecstatic dance, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And five rhythms. Who developed that? That's a pretty famous.
Gabrielle Roth. Yeah, Gabrielle Roth. I found it to be one of the best forms of therapy for nervous system regulation for me in my healing process. I highly recommend it.
Awesome. Now, I want to get back to this idea of retraining your brain to respond differently to potential food allergens. And I was reminded when you were talking about this of conversation I had with another guest, Ian Mitchell, and I shared with him how I know somebody, this guy Alex, who's allergic to bananas, but by accident he discovered he's not allergic to organic bananas. So that was pretty shocking. But what Ian shared was that he used food allergens live on stage at conferences like the biohacking conference, where one of his colleagues was terribly allergic to shellfish, and he put what was it? I think shrimp water, like from a shrimp cocktail or something like that, onto one arm, and of course it got all red and inflamed and everything. And then he put the shrimp water into a Leela quantum block, I think it was the Infinity block from Leela Quantum Tech, and then he took it out and then put that one on. It's the exact same shrimp water, but treated with quantum energy, and then put it on the other arm and no reaction. Pretty wild.
I think that that would show that the nervous system perceived that it was a changed energetic or molecular, it had a different imprint that the nervous system didn't recognize as threat. And I think, I understand a little bit about that technology, and it literally is taking threatening fields of frequency and making them non-threatening. So, the body just didn't recognize the same signature as it did with the shrimp water on the original arm.
Wild. So are you familiar? I think we've spoken about on other conversations about Leela. Do you have the heal capsule? Do you have the quantum block or the infinity block?
It is on my Christmas list. I just moved and I do other things, but I've been reading about their stuff and I'm totally into all of that. So yeah, I will be having one soon.
That's awesome. Yep. And by the way, if a listener's interested in getting an infinity block from Leela, uh, besides listening to the episode with Philip, the founder, co-founder of Leela, and of course Ian's episode where we were talking about Leela as well, you'll find that there is a discount code, Stephan10, so you get 10% off. And I don't make anything off of that. It for some people they have an arrangement where they get 5% off, and then the other 5% goes as an affiliate commission. I just said give the 10% fully to the person purchasing the quantum block, and I don't need any any compensation for it. So if you want 10% off, Stephan10. Anyway, so I wanted to go back to something that when we were talking a little bit about a shift in consciousness that's happening, and things like the full court of atonement, which is an example of how to shift consciousness in the higher dimensions and then have that reflect back here on the physical plane. Do you want to share anything about the court of atonement and your experience with it and your understanding of it?
Yeah. I have been fascinated with the idea of morphogenic fields for a long time. We use our own version in Primal Trust called an attunement, but it's got a different purpose than the full court of atonement, but the same concept that there are many fields, there are many dimensions of reality. And when we as a collective have a specific intention, and the more people that have that intention in that particular field, a morphogenic field is created. I think this is why, like, Dr. Joe Dispenza has all the great heart coherence results that he has. They create a morphogenic field with his heart coherence program. And the full court of atonement is another morphogenic field with a specific intention, a specific frequency that we are attuning to and putting a problem that we can only perceive with our third dimensional awareness into a higher dimensional awareness to be sorted out by super conscious intelligence that we are a part of and that we have access to and that our higher self is a part of. And I think it's simply making that intentional command to our higher self to say, hey, sort this out in the way that you know is best, and I'm willing to receive that. We do a similar thing in Primal Trust with an attunement. We say, higher self, we have these particular blocks in the body. You know where they came from. Please open up those files, make edits, and shift that frequency in the body. The higher self is it's in a different dimension. And I think that that is one of our future fields of understanding, that as a collective, as we put our observational effect into these quantum fields, into these different frequencies, like the miracles are going to exponentially happen because we are intending it as conscious beings. We are collectively putting our intentions into that field, and then it has more of a potential result. I know that sounds completely woo-woo, but it feels right to me when I think of it.
Well, even if it is woo-woo, it's how things really are. So either get with the program or stay with your stay with one's head in the sand, right? So we live in a woo-woo universe, not a purely physical one. I mean, if somebody thinks that we are, they're certainly not a listener. They've long tuned out of my show by now. Anyway, so this was really a delight. If our listener wants to work with you and your technologies, your modalities and all that, do the Primal Trust program and get into parasympathetic and into a place of regulation and healing, where do they go?
So our website is www.primaltrust.org. And probably by the time this airs, I have a full new ebook about how healing happens with a lot of free tools, the science. It's like a mini program. It's for free. It's a little over 100 pages, and it will give you a full download of this approach and tools to get started. So you can find that on the website as well. And it's just a membership program monthly. You can cancel anytime. We have live classes, we have courses, we have a whole community. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, so I'll put the link to the ebook in the show notes, since that's not quite live yet. But yeah, we'll also include, of course, the show notes will have all the different tools and modalities and books and everything that we talked about in this episode too. Awesome. Well, thank you, Dr. Kat. Thank you, listener. And make it a great week. We'll find you on the next episode, hopefully more healthy, more tuned in, and more regulated. I'm your host, Stephan Spencer, signing off.